Ronald, you have a very strong background in the financial sector, asset management, deposit trading. As far as I understood, can you tell us something about your experiences? For how long did you work there?
Well, my experiences are more complicated than what you mentioned just now. Actually, I have been an entrepreneur my entire life. Independence being the key component to me. I have once tried being an employee, but that didn't work out. Being an entrepreneur, I have seen many sectors, amongst which I have experienced the financial world. All my other companies as an entrepreneur, like my own fashion line for ladies, car dealership and also import-export, had me involved to such an extent with building up my own fortune. It inherently guided me into the world of finance. Working in import-export, you encounter different currencies and you have to go to the exchange to trade through brokers. And one of the brokers said at some point, "Ronald, I've been looking at your life for a long time and you are always busy. You earn money, we know, but what is your goal?" And I replied, "The only goal I have as an entrepreneur is to earn as much money as I possibly can. Because the more money I have, the quicker I can retire, be free and of course have status. Basically everything you want in this society, or at least, that's what I thought back then." So the broker said, "In that case, stop what you are doing now, stop with all those companies and just start dealing money, go into the financial world." And that is the beginning of that situation that is connected to your original question. The broker had a place in the exchange market and he dealt in currencies, deposits, so trading in assets to make money out of differences in interest rates, and that involved the aforementioned asset management. Those three aspects together formed the interested package I said yes to. He said, "All right, you can take my place here, I'll train you, introduce you into the network. But in exchange I want 10% of your annual earnings." So he basically sold me his spot in the financial world and asked a 10% commission, which I paid him. I said, "Yes, fine with me." Then he replied, "There is one thing you need to know. If you can't put your conscience in the proverbial freezer, and I don't mean on -18 degrees, but on -100 degrees, then don't get involved in this." That was the message. You want a lot of money, you can obtain that, I can help you, but it comes at a great cost. Because you cannot do this with a clear conscience. Well, I laughed at that. I was young and naive. From my youth, from the way I came into life, my far from ideal youth led me to develop a certain view of the world and humanity.
What do you mean by that? No warm, loving family?
My mother always did the best she could to make us feel loved. But she was hampered by that due to the behavior of my father, who caused us to feel more like we lived in a war zone with each other. That isn't an exemplary situation to grow up in. And as a child growing up like that, led me to believe that the world and humanity are far from great.
So putting your conscience in the freezer was fitting in as a starting point?
I was partially already used to doing that out of self-preservation. So to put my conscience in the freezer was not an impossible task to me.
So it became a survival mechanism to you?
Yes, yes. And my view of humanity and the world around me wasn't exactly positive either. I only thought of myself, that the way I grew up to be out of self-preservation, and I got into that deal. which meant that slowly I built up a customer base. And as I improved my skills within the network, I got deeper into the financial world. And then it turns out the world is really small, and you keep noticing that. Even when I was still working in import-export, dealing in grain and such, you notice it is just a small circle. And if we talk about the hardcore circle in the financial world, I don't mean Miss Jean at the bank, but the big global flows of money which you use for trading.
Zeg maar de grote geldstromen die op aarde rondgaan, waar je mee gaat handelen.
You are talking about worldwide cash flows, so not the Netherlands in particular where you started working?
The Netherlands do play a distinct part in this story, but the world does not revolve around it.
Nederland is niet het centrum van de aarde. Nederland is een
The Netherlands are a part of a large global financial system in which you work through exchange mark if you want to do official transactions.
Als je officiële transacties wil doen, kan je dat via beurs doen. En heel veel banken
and many banks who do the currency
de
exchange
geldwisselaars zijn,
get certain assignments from clients which they can't get away with easily.
moeilijk mee weg kunnen. En dan is het handig.
Then the need arises for people like me to were the straw men where big money flows are involved.
Je kan ook zeggen de loopjongen van het grote geld.
We used certain financial constructions, international legislation, to move money in such a way making everything okay.
Het geld zo gaan bewegen dat het allemaal oké is. Dus dat
So all supervisors, regulatory bodies that are in place worldwide, because they are, that no one wakes up seeing what is going on, like a year or two ago, with the scandal around Panama.
Hoop ophef hadden over Panama.
The Panama Papers.
Ja,
Yes,
Tax evasion.
I think. Well, it was about avoiding taxes. Tax evasion is when you break all the rules. This had to do with avoiding.
Het ging hier om ontwijken.
But when you see what happened there, I'm like, guys, that is old news. And who are you bring with that, because it is peanuts and hardly relevant. However, for the common people, that is great news, but it is not anything big, but it does show there is something very wrong in this world. For example, there are people in the Netherlands with certain positions who have bank accounts in Panama, with legislation that allows them not to pay taxes in the Netherlands, which is completely legal. Constructions like that were part of my job. When we had to change currency, we had changes, the first boycotts in Iraq in the early 90s.
Irak, het was in het begin van de jaren 90.
When there was a boycott in Iraq because of the war that started there. And we were confronted with what we called Iraqi dollar. Iraqi dollars, which were actually American dollars. The American dollar has a direct relation to the oil prices, which made it a world trading currency backed up by oil. As long as that connection is in place, the dollar has a value. Officially, the Iraqi people weren't allowed to sell their oil due to the boycott. In theory, that is, because never before there was such a big business in oil. With discounts in this case, because officially it wasn't allowed, so with discounts it still crossed the borders. These dollars, because the energy was always paid in the dollars, so the Iraqi dollars had to go somewhere. You couldn't just take them to the desk at the bank because of all the regulations and checks did provide a certain protection. Because money laundering and criminality wasn't anything new back then. Now we call it terrorism. But that was then also the case. So, then you need people to take the heat. As straw men, you got invited to a bank, for example, in Germany's, with basements full of trucks filled with money. And then you think, sure, Drugs.
transport, een druk bedrijf.
Transports. A busy company.
Kom maar even mee.
Come with me.
En als ze dan
Then they
allemaal
show you they
vol
are
zaten,
all
dan
filled
laten
to
we
maximum capacity with dollars. And they tell you we need to get rid of all this cash. So change them pounds, German marks, this, that, in such way, and it needs to go there and there.
Are we now talking about money laundering?
Well, processing cash. Processing cash in such a way that we can legally reintroduce it into the money circuit.
So that was your task?
That was an assignment my colleagues and I got. You are never alone on an assignment, because you cannot do this on your own. It is not possible. We all know Scrooge McDuck scooping money with his shovel. Well, we literally had to do that over there. It was impossible to process all at once. So, then you need to find a way. Cash used to be the predominant way of paying, where nowadays most is digital. But you tried to find a way to process the cash. How do you reintroduce the cash into the circuit so Iraq can deal in its soil without being hampered? Because they are the ones that earn the money. Iraq doesn't want. Look, you mentioned money laundering, but what it was about the boycott, Iraq had to stick to the rules, and buy, you know, everything you want to know about the world. You can know by following the money. That is the bottom line. Everyone can say blah, 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 but make sure you follow the money, then you'll find the truth. Same thing goes for that situation. So the only thing Iraq and their buying partners wanted was to remain free of any accusations. Because the partners who bought it were the ones placing the boycott in the first place, but they are actually all friends on the same side. Everybody thinks there are opposites like good and bad guys in the world. But on the higher levels, it is just a game and they are all working together. However, they do have to stick to the rules and regulations they themselves have created to keep the rest of society suppressed and make sure that it will not be too crowded at the top. So you have to play by your own rules. So what is going on there is to make sure that nobody can trace you, apart from the elite themselves. Nobody in lower ranks can find out what really happened.
Compartmentalized, that's how we call it.
Yes.
Everyone knows only his own little piece. Only the elite knows what is happening.
Yes, but because we were doing the dirty work, we had to know a lot. Because we couldn't afford to make any mistakes.
How high in the pyramid did you get? Were you close to the top of the pyramid?
Well, we were communicating with them. My ego would have loved it when I got to this position of belonging to the top itself. Nowadays we still talk about 8,000 to 8,500 people in the world who run the entire world. It would have been amazing to get into such a position back then.
All right, but if we say the top knows 100%, can you estimate how much you knew and understood of what happened?
In my work, I had to know 100% of what was going on. There was no other way, because of the interests of the people involved were huge, especially for the top. If I wouldn't know all the details, I would end up making mistakes, which would cause a spin-off, because those mistakes would be detected. Then the people that don't know anything about it would interfere. We are talking about having nerves of steel to function at this level.
So did you have nerves of steel?
Yes, it worked just fine.
The freezer worked very well for you.
Yes, I played at the highest level for about 5 years. And then it was totally over, out and done with. That was a very intense moment for me.
That happened suddenly?
Well, no, the thing is, I gave a small example of what was involved. So, in this case, currency exchange, dollar to something else, deposited in a safe manner, and managing assets well, so it could grow to rate of return, leading to reinvestments with the money. The level I played at in those 5 years, and that didn't happen overnight. You need to earn your place. I am skilled at connecting the dots, information in order to achieve a full picture of all the things involved.
Informaties op een bepaalde manier met elkaar te combineren.
That need to be taken into account within the playing field, which is a very detailed process. You stand out when you are gifted in this. This is the reason I was trusted with the full 100% of the information where it concerned my jobs. So, I didn't know about everything they knew, but everything that I needed to know regarding the case. I was working with colleagues. I was often put in the leading role because I kept a good overview of the situation.
You're good at making quick switches.
Yes, and I was good at innovative thinking to solve the problem. I had fun creating solutions in such a way to always stay ahead and outsmart them. Staying within the rules of the game but playing around with them to make everything match up. I love that game. However, on the other hand, you had a great amount of responsibility and you learned more and more about the real world, since through the financial world you learn all of the actual truth.
So you say all. In what regard?
Well, your clients give you glimpses of how the world really works. In hindsight, I still didn't know everything, but I did know a lot. Because my clients were banks who didn't want blood on their hands. But within those banks there always is a number of people who know damn well what is going on. So, like 1% within a bank knows the truth of the matter regarding the happenings within the world. Which is not surprising, considering they are involved in the flows of money. Those are your clients. You also have governments to deal with, multinationals. You have to deal with secret services, and what they now call terrorist organizations. You get all of the groups that are involved with the big money as clients. Then you start seeing the connections. So, they might be compartmentalized as you just mentioned, regarding knowledge. But because I am in the middle, I see how they relate to another. You see the money coming from this place, then going to that place, etc. You keep gaining information and thereby an overview of what is really going on.
So do you have to serve and keep all of those groups happy, including terrorist organizations? You were trying to keep everybody happy?
Yes.
My God.
That was my job.
Keeping all the balls in the air.
Yes, indeed. So one of the things that I found out, I did not know that before, but now I do, is about secret services. You think they are there to serve and protect a people, country, etc., but they actually turn out to be the criminal organizations, to be more precise. The system is heavily so. We are talking about financing wars, creating wars, so basically creating a lot of misery in this world. So, lots of conflict. And then I think to myself, if only people knew what the world is really like. Secret services will stop at nothing. Nothing. But they also have their flows of money, because if they are trading in drugs or weapons or, for that matter, people, all that money has to go somewhere. Everything has to be financed.
You say it, but you could confirm they are doing this?
All of them. All of them. So the entire world as we think we know it is just an illusion we believe in. Which is something you find out in this line of work and where it all went wrong for me, to put it that way.
Right. You mean, finally that is?
In hindsight, yes, it was for the best, but my freezer started to malfunction. There were things happening. For example, I went to a different trade market and one of my colleagues there said, "Ronald, you remember that case with the Italian lira? I sometimes mention that during talks as well. Do you remember those deals in which we did massive dumping of the lira, which reduced the value of the currency, which caused a company in Italy to be hit in such a way they went bankrupt? And then you hear at the exchange, you remember that successful deal with the lira? Yes. And then they say, did you know that the owner committed suicide and left a family behind? Things like that. And back then we laughed at it. Altogether, all of us. We looked down on people, mocked them. It was just a product, waste. Everything was worthless trash. Nature, the planet, everything could burn and break.
Just useless parasites.
Just as long as we met our goals, as long as we were growing, many of my colleagues ended up drinking or using drugs. Not me. Maybe I should have.
Or not.
No, in hindsight, it was for the best and I'm happy to still be alive. However, all those horrible things started to eat at me.
Can you give an example? Because I can sense a lot of terrible things happen to you.
Yes, it is difficult for me to talk about.
I can feel that, but only whatever you wish to share is all right.
Yes, I only talk about things I want to tell. But it does evoke lots of emotions, and with my conscience not being in the freezer, it touches me deeply.
Yes, I feel the same way. All right. Can you tell me the worst thing that has happened that caused the tipping point in your situation?
Well, that was the beginning of the end. You get so deep into these circles. And you sign a lifetime contract, not with blood or anything, to never disclose names of companies, organizations or people. I think that is why I am still alive. You have to stick to it. If we are talking about the worst things that I have experienced, I just told you about things that made the freezer glitch. My conscience started to show itself. Let's put it this way. I was training to become a psychopath and I failed. I did not complete the training and didn't become a psychopath. My conscience came back, and the most difficult part for me was, because I had such a great status there, I was a success. I was trusted with the people playing at this level. To put it carefully, most of these people followed a not very mainstream religion. So, you have Catholics, Protestants, all sorts of religions. These people, most of them, were Luciferians. And then you can say, religion is a fairy tale. God doesn't exist. None of that is real. Well, for these people, it is truth and reality. And they served something immaterial, what they called Lucifer. And I also was in contact with those circles, only I laughed at it because to me they were just clients. So, I went to places called churches of Satan.
So now we are talking about Satanism.
Yes. So, I visited these churches, just as a visitor, dropped by. And then they were doing their holy mass with naked women and liquor and stuff. And it just amused me. I didn't believe in any of this stuff, and was far from convinced if any of this was real.
It was just a spectacle to you.
Yes, in my opinion, the darkness and evil is within the people themselves. I didn't make the connection yet. So I was a guest in those circles, and it amused me greatly to see all those named women and the other things. It was the good life. But then at some point, I was invited, which is why I'm telling you all this, to participate in sacrifices abroad. That was the breaking point.
kinderen.
children.
You were asked to do that?
Ik kon het niet.
Yes. And I couldn't do that.
En toen...
Would you like to stop for a moment, by the way?
No. And then I started to slowly break down. I lived through quite a lot as a child myself, and this really touched me deeply. Everything changed. But that is the world I found myself in. And then I started to refuse assignments within my job. I could no longer do it, which made me a threat. I was no longer capable of functioning optimally. My performance started to shake and I had refused tasks. I had not participated. The purpose of the whole thing, eventually, in that world, is that they have everybody in their pocket. You need to be susceptible to blackmail. And blackmailing me proved to be very hard if I look back on it. They wanted to do that through those children. And that broke me.
Is that, you are not telling me something new, what they also do in politics?
If you Google this, you'll find enough worldwide witness accounts to know this isn't a Walt Disney fairy tale. Unfortunately, the truth is that worldwide they have been doing this for thousands of years. I once studied theology, and even in the Bible you find references to these practices with Israelites. The reason the first 10 tribes were banished to Babylonia was because of these rituals with children, including the sacrificing of children. So this is pertinent. All this made me believe, because I realized there was more to life than meets the eye. There is a whole invisible world. It is real. You really do talk about a dark force and a manifestation of light. So, I resorted to studying theology to make sense of it all.
And psychology as well, if I remember correctly?
Yes, but that I did in my first life, because through commercial psychology, mass psychology, I was able to manipulate situations for my own benefit.
That is scary, because if you dig into that you find Tavistock Institute and mind control, MK Ultra, Monarch and the like.
Yes, that is correct, but that was all part of the job. Through training at the job, I got into that more deeply, because when you are making deals, you also need to manipulate the media. You have to manipulate lots of things because nothing can be seen as it is. Everything has to appear to be something different. You see the people as a flock of sheep. You put a couple of border collies and drive them in a direction. And to be honest with you, I still see that happening around me. People are still, through the systems and methods that we ourselves used to use, being treated in that same way, and it still works. People still don't understand how it really works and are still on the level of as long as I have my beer and whatever, completely self-absorbed, also a survival mechanism. I mean, it is the program after all. But you still see how stupidly easy it is to put people in a certain direction, when you are the one pulling the strings. That is
mass psychology.
Yes, and later, much later, in all those studies and discoveries, I found a document which they are claiming is bullshit, of course, the Protocols of Zion. And nowadays I recommend everyone to read the whole of that incredibly boring document. Just work through it, read it though.
We are also talking about Zionism.
Yes, of course. If you read the Protocols of Zion and really study them and understand, then it is like reading the newspaper of the daily life. How from their position of ultimate power, and ultimate it has literally become. But that is only because the people don't stand up for themselves. They don't realize what reality is.
And we have all been programmed. If you dare to say you are against Zionism, then you are branded an anti-Semite.
The negative, you can say evil, the Luciferians, the Satanists. Whatever you wish to call it, it is a real entity. I have found that what is written in the Bible, and not just the Bible, you can find it in so many books. There really has been a moment of separation from the manifestation of light, in which a group went their own way and are carrying an intense hatred, anger. The people who do not underestimate the severity of this are but few, because this is an all-annihilating force that hates our guts. It hates creation. It hates life. And it will do anything to destroy us completely. And the way to do that is to divide humanity. Divide and conquer is their truth. Humanity is a manifestation of light. That is the true creation. As long as you divide them based on political parties, skin color, you name it, then you, from a Luciferian point of view that is, suppress the full capacities of your enemy, their full power. They can't stand up for themselves. Because if that would happen, the Luciferians would lose. Then this monster, the greedy monster, would disappear. I tell people about this old American general who puts an entire room of people in the dark. The eyes adapt to the darkness, but you can't see a thing. The general doesn't say a word and suddenly he flicks on a lighter, one little light. And due to the prolonged darkness, you experience a manifestation of light from a single point and everyone can slightly see each other again. And then he says, that is the power of our light.
Beautiful.
Unite. Unite. Come together. And this entire shit story ceases to exist. That's how fast it could happen. But that is easy for me to say now. But then I was in a period of my life in which I was crumbling down.
Could you tell us something specific about that? How did that happen? Because you were invited.
I started to refuse assignments. My conscience came back after the request involving the children, and I started to refuse more and more. I had a conscience and I couldn't function anymore.
But you did still show up at work after that?
I didn't really have a choice. I had my own business with several offices and employees. Everything was still rolling.
It must have been hard.
Yes, it got very hard, all the tensions. So, on the one hand you are playing with money on a high level, in which you can't afford to make mistakes. Otherwise everything falls down at once. Your entire business is ruined, everybody involved, including yourself. Then you are really screwed. So that brings a lot of stress, factoring in the resurfacing of a conscience. I was warned off when I got into this. Don't do it if you can't put your conscience at minus 100 degrees in the freezer.
And you probably realized that then?
Yes, I heard myself laugh at it back then. But it wasn't a joke at all. I totally did not understand where I really got into.
And your proverbial freezer was switched off?
Broken. I couldn't do it anymore. So, I tried to work through it, keep up appearances. I didn't know how to get out of this. I was trapped as well. Everybody was trapped. This all led me to crash completely eventually. My body just simply stopped. The first thing I saw was my mother crying at the intensive care.
You ended up at the IC?
Yeah, I really shut down.
You had literally crashed?
Yes, yes. At that time I didn't believe in anything, not I can still recall how I saw From that corner, I was looking down upon myself. I saw how they were working on me.
You had a near-death experience.
Well, you could call it that. I have seen I am not my body. I'm in my body. But I am not just my body. I have seen them working on me. And later on, I've been reluctant to talk about it for a long time. I really talked about it much later. But when I did, I had researched so many things already and started to believe. I was starting to better understand the spiritual and the material. At that point, this intense experience got its own place. The realization that I'm not my body. It's just a vessel. So, I lived through all of that, but I also needed a long time to recover.
Yes, of course.
Yes, I was a train wreck. Complete wreck. I was completely burned out. I had crashed and the body needed a year to recover. Because I don't really want to get into it now, but in those circles, I got tortured physically during my exit time. This was in order to make sure I would never break the contract of secrecy. So, I was taken for a certain amount of time. I was treated. All those factors together just increased the stress I was experiencing. Literally running full speed towards my own end.
Do you mean abductions, as well call it, or programming?
No. They exposed me to certain types of torture. That makes sure you'll never damage anyone in that world. I didn't realize that back then, so this is all from hindsight. It did all happen that way. So the end of my first life was so extreme that I couldn't handle it anymore. I couldn't handle it anymore. In no way. However, my mind power was so strong that it only happened to my own body. That was, well, I didn't know what to do anymore. There were no options left for me. So that is why sometimes I think, of course that is not true, but I wish, like so many colleagues, I had taken the drugs and alcohol route. At least my end would have been more gentle, because most of them are just dead by now. Even though I know there are more strawmen walking around, there are little still alive whom I knew back then. Most of them are already gone. Well, I was dead too, but I'm still here.
So, you still have something left to do.
Yes, I suppose you could say that. But that is, I can't say in short, since I don't know how long we have been talking, the world that I found myself in. If you have any specific questions, then I can answer them, but I had hoped to be more concise, but I just don't know how.
Well, you have my gratitude for all you have shared.
To me, it is still a very big deal. Yes, I never experienced such in my life. It even did not come to my mind that this would happen. I was actually doing something very different when we did the interview, and perhaps it is good to mention this. I experienced a very heavy and intense life, until today, which has split into a first life and a second life, a real death. And I've actually decided for myself the last 2.5 years to do something with the trauma I have incurred. And there are quite a few, because I got stuck.
Again?
I got stuck in myself, yes. So, I've been lucky enough to embrace a specialist who was able to deal with trauma processing. And from there I made little steps which eventually led me to share with the audience. Just like we did.
Courageous.
That is a lot of processing. but it also has a lot to do with my new life, which has been running for some 22 years now. I started a positive life. I became a social entrepreneur and I am very committed to life. And I saw, especially from the Netherlands. The Netherlands, as you might say, is quite a country of parochialism. And where often a culture is expanding from out of ignorance, but especially from out of fear. And I already saw it on forehand, because of the manifestations I am working on in my life, are becoming so big, worldwide, worn by humanity, that I already felt it. If I do not clear myself up inwardly, as well as outside myself, then unfortunately I know the Dutch people and their mentality too well. If something gets beautiful and becomes a success, it needs to be broken. That is apparently tradition in the Netherlands. There are only a few things that are praised in the Netherlands. Yes, if our soccer team wins a world championship, then we are all happy and that is positive. But when it comes to essential things that are good for us, they often break you down. And I thought, if I get more clean inside and I become more and more strong through trauma processing, just like the manifestation outside myself, the moment will come that the Dutch will show their nasty tendency, we are going to destroy it. Then you better clean your own slate completely, make everything clear, where you come from. Then they cannot do anything with it anymore, because after all, it is not about me. It is about the manifestation. Because once a manifestation has been realized, I am going to start something else. So, that is the way I started. To get rid of it from within, it gave me a lot of relief. It freed me enormously. It was really a kind of birth. I also found it very intense. I have to say I have seen worldwide what has happened. In the meantime, I have heard that over 18 million people have watched the interview. Moreover, about part 2, I am not sure, but from part 1, which has been published before, more than 18 million. Part 2, who knows, some more, but perhaps the same. That was not just about me but also about the current power structure here on Earth. The financial system, because people need to know about that. But I did not expect this to happen. I did not hope for this either. It was more something for myself and for what I am creating. Because I'm dealing with a lot of people around me. I have 5,000 people in some manifestation gathered around me, in 5 different countries. I bear a lot of responsibility for that, because I once started an initiative, started a manifestation. Perhaps later on we can go into that and what it is all about. But I thought, it is not going to happen that, because of the dark period in my past. They are going to break it down. Because trust is hard to gain but easy to lose in the Netherlands. All based on fear, but okay. People don't even know what they are talking about.
Where does that come from? Are you talking about the fact that this is something human, or is this a matter of conscious control of a higher power structure, that the good things will be destroyed?
I did. I think it was in part 1, and otherwise it was in part 2, but I did mention, and it seems almost a commercial, the protocols of Zion. The protocols of the wise elders of Zion. And I still believe that if people are going to read it, they will better understand what they are in. Yet I have received comments from people who have read it and they were overwhelmed. Really? Wow. We really live in a time what is written in there, while it is already an old document. So, more and more people begin to understand where all the reactions, also from us, come from. Because we are talking about a matrix. Once they produced a movie about it, It even became a trilogy, 3 parts. Then I think, wow, it is just a movie. But it shows as clear as possible where most people live in a kind of dream that is not real. And what if you are part of the dream and then I come up with a story like this? It really happened. I have to say, as far as I know, more than 95% or 96%, which is a rough estimate, is overwhelmingly positive. They are incredibly positive. Do you know that even for you people are praying worldwide? That teams are formed to support you, to be able to continue your work.
Yes, that is beautiful.
It is incredible what has happened. On the other hand, we have also seen poison coming our way. The arsenic, the biological meal was the reaction, with a touch of arsenic in it to break it down. Most of the time it is an energetic mechanism that sometimes works through them without even knowing. It works on their fear, because when I am speaking the truth, then it becomes a real possibility that the world and the reality they live in, their comfort, is going to shake.
Is breaking down, yes.
And that is scary because change is scary. So, you are already afraid and you got some more fears. Then it is far more easy. And they tried to do that to me in the meantime. To break me down, and trying to prove that I am a liar, a fantasist, and mention the whole range of what you can imagine. For not accepting the truth, because I am speaking the truth. This is the reason why I am married to a woman for more than 10 years. For this. I say what I say, I do what I do, and that is right. Because I have not so much to hide. I am hiding something about my old life. My first life. That is pure protection for myself but also for many others. But over the last 22 years that I came back and really became who I am. You can ask me anything.
Yes, because you are telling me now. You cannot talk about those things out of protection of yourself and others.
Yes.
I understand that very well. But a lot of people are using that as an argument to say that you are a fantasist. That it is not true what you are saying and that you apparently have another agenda. How do you look at it and what can you say about it?
Yes, I get that very well. I mean, what they ask is, I know someone who said, give me a curriculum vitae. Yes, and I look at it and I think, boy oh boy, how can you ask such a thing? I mean, I cannot. First, I have no CV, I was always an entrepreneur. But how can I write a CV about my first life? That's self-employment. Also including cars, textile, the ladies' fashion line, in import and export. Those were the top players. Do you really think back then that I was a saint? Hello. I was just a top criminal, okay? How bad do you want me to tell myself that I was bad? Do I need to tell that I am a murderer, which I am not? I mean, what do they want me to tell about that? I cannot tell anything. And quite simple. Everything I say for the people who are still alive, I will draw them along with me. Actually, it comes down to over and out. And all of that because I need to prove that it is like it is. One can also look into worldwide investigations and testimonies that already exist, because I am not the first one. It is a lot worse. This is timeless. Once there was a rebel, he was a carpenter, he performed miracles here on earth. He told us who he was. He was the Son of the Highest Supreme. Yes, he did miracles and they still did not believe him. No, you know who he was. He came from the devil. He was a Satanist. Yes? How much more do people need to know to see what is going on here on earth? How much? How much? And I do understand what they are talking about. Of course, I can understand that. They cannot understand what I am talking about, because it is not part of their life. That is not possible. I mean, it is the same with the breaking point you asked for, which was very difficult for me. I was invited. Do you really think they say, "Hey Ronald, we have a party, come on, we are going to chop little children"?
No, of course it does not work like that.
How can you think like that? Such is a very careful route, involving two of my colleagues who joined the inner circles, who invited me to also join the inner circle, because I should gain more strength, more power. That was a trust relationship that they have built up with me in the long run, and they thought I was ready for this. How could they know that this was a trigger for me? That was not the intention. So, it is nonsense to think that, just like on a normal Saturday evening when everybody is going out, that I ended up on a massacre with children. Those are just images people create, while for me the invitation, the truth about that, already gave me the shock I could not handle. And we are purely speaking about an inner circle, from a religion that is sick. And we all feel shocked about that. But then I have another example, also about children. Because if we need to throw it all out there, because people stay where they are, that is the problem. The good people. It is not the bad people, there are only a few. Bad people do their thing, but it is the good people, worldwide, who do nothing. For a very long time, and I am a little angry with them.
Rightly so.
Because I was still in my youth, between 15 and 20 years old. Via family, first line, I heard stories from nurses who were sent to India for a mission, for development assistance over there. Those people. I am trying to control myself. Those people were burnt out after 4 or 5 years, completely traumatized. Nurses back in the Netherlands, no one was allowed to know. But what was this all about? Children. Again. Every time, children. Organ trafficking. We just think it is normal for a baby to be saved. But where do these organs come from? And those children are still alive the moment they remove their organs. Those nurses could not cope with it anymore. India. I am not sure if this is still going on right now. World, stand up. Go find out. Organ trafficking. Children. No one is talking about that. No one is taking action. Those Satanists, fuck them. That is just a pathetic tiny little group. Organ trafficking, worldwide. The god Mammon. How much more shit do you need to get from me? I now hear stories, including lawsuits, in England, about the rape of young girls on a massive scale, and the culprits are acquitted. We do not protect our own children. What kind of a sick world is this? This is our future. And I can testify, start with damaging little children from early on and your world becomes even sicker. It is a license to a third world war and a total destruction of humanity, if we continue the way we do now with our youth, with our children. And then they say that I am a liar, a fantasist. Look around and wake up. You don't need me. You don't need me. Not at all. I might be so far, finally in my life, after all these therapies and processing, that I stand up for the children, because I care for them, very much.
And you are...
Yes.
You know how it is.
Yes. For 2 years they got me completely worn out. Back then I have had it with my dad. Then, through the Child Protection Board, I was placed in a sheltered home to protect me. Then I got so-called loving caregivers for 2 years. Yes, I even did not know what it was, sex. I did not even know. For 2 years long. Then you cry out for your daddy and your mommy, while you actually come out of hell. But rather hell than this. Yes? I know what is going on in this sick world. I've lived through it myself. Tell me I am a liar. Go and look in the mirror. Who is lying here? You. It is you. You don't want to see the world as it is.
One yourself.
Yes.
You know how it is.
Yes. For 2 years they got me completely worn out. Back then I have had it with my dad. Then, through the Child Protection Board, I was placed in a sheltered home to protect me. Then I got so-called loving caregivers for 2 years. Yes. I even did not know what it was, sex. I did not even know. For 2 years long. Then you cry out for your daddy and your mommy, while you actually come out of hell. But rather hell than this. Yes? I know what is going on in this sick world. I've lived through it myself. Tell me I am a liar. Go and look in the mirror. Who is lying here? You. It is you. You don't want to see the world as it is. I promised to control my emotions today, to keep it nicely monotonous, as it should be, but I can't. I am who I am. And I am so committed to life. That is my mission. That became my mission, my life task. Good management of all life, that is my mission. For the children.
And you needed that trigger.
Yes.
That is why we are here.
I have nothing to do with all those people. I can understand them. But I will ask, please, look inside yourself. Why does it trigger you when you see me and hear me? And with all I have to say to you, what is going on within yourself? What is being touched? Why do you come in defense? Why are you in denial? Why do you need it from your mind to burn me down? Because we are talking about that now. A small part considered it necessary. The mass does not, but a small part thinks it is necessary. What is it? What is this in yourself that you need to do this? Take a look at it, be honest with yourself. What is your agenda?
Ronald Bernard revealed all of this and seemingly managed to get away with it. He got married and moved to the US, but clearly, someone didn't like what he had to say. In 2017, Bernard was 61 years old and had been living in Florida with his wife in the city of Sebring. At 1 p.m. on the 23rd of July, he decided to go for a walk in nature. But at 3:46 p.m., the Highland County Sheriff's Office received a call from Bernard, who was in a state of distress, telling the operator that he was lost. Bernard called the authorities several more times, saying that he was being followed and that he was in danger, with the calls finally ceasing at 6:13 p.m. Authorities pinged his cell phone, but it kept showing different locations. To respond to the emergency, police sent several search and rescue parties after him, including canines, four-wheelers, and a helicopter. Sadly, though, the rescue came too late. Bernard was found floating face down at 8:24 p.m. in a shallow stream of water. No cause of death was ever revealed. Some say Bernard was suffering from dementia, yet there were no prior signs of its development, and Bernard was considered healthy at the time of his death. It was clear that he knew too much, and someone didn't want him to reveal anything else. Ronald Bernard wasn't specifically talking about the Dutroux scandal, but as a Dutch banker, he certainly had to have knowledge about it. Many claim that Ronald wasn't only talking about satanic bankers, but a much larger organization, one that's also been linked to the Chateau d'Amereuil. Many believe that Bernard was silenced for speaking out about the Illuminati. Because of the similarity in their rituals, and because the Illuminati is tied to hunting parties and the mass programming of the world through the elite, allegedly, Chateau d'Amereuil is thought to be one of the Illuminati's ritual grounds. One of their rituals is said to be known as Eyes Wide Shut, with the movie by the same name being created as a way to wake up the populace to its existence. Stanley Kubrick was the director of that celebrated film, and it was released shortly before his death, but not before the movie was altered, as some conspiracy theorists claim. Some theorists say that Eyes Wide Shut was a specific nod to the satanic practices of the Illuminati, almost like a warning from Kubrick. It's thought that Stanley tried to reveal what he knew of this dark ritual, but after 30 minutes of footage was removed by the studio and his strange death before its release, we may never know the truth. This ritual, besides sacrifice, is said to involve and is taped as potential blackmail to ensure it's kept a secret. The Illuminati is also said to practice a strange form of mind control that's meant to keep its members from telling the truth, eerily echoing what Ronald Bernard had to say in his interviews about being tortured during his exit to make him silent. These rumors were allegedly proven to be a reality after the Mark to True scandal came to light and confirmed that evil roamed the halls of this Gothic structure. The True scandal also proved that these elites would go to great lengths to protect themselves, and the deaths of those 20 witnesses sealed the fate of the case. Similarly, Ronald Bernard faced a strange and suspicious demise, a seemingly healthy man who suddenly died after claiming he was being followed. Because of these murders, it's clear that this group, be it the Illuminati, Abraxas, or both, will take any measures to protect themselves and their evil cabal. As if to prove that this group has a much farther reach than just the streets of Belgium, people claim that George H.W. Bush was a member of this shadowy power structure. At the 1988 Republican National Convention, George H.W. Bush accepted the nomination for president. While doing so, he referenced something odd. At the National Convention, then again at his inauguration speech, he references 1,000 points of light.
I've spoken of 1,000 points of light, of all the community organizations that are spread like stars throughout the nation doing good. We will work hand in hand, encouraging, sometimes leading, sometimes being led, rewarding. We will work on this in the White House, in the cabinet agencies. I will go to the people and the programs that are the brighter points of light, and I'll ask every member of my government to become involved. The old ideas are new again because they're not old. They are timeless. Duty, sacrifice, commitment, and a patriotism that finds its expression in taking part and pitching in.
Then again, later in another speech, he mentions it a second time.
I'm a man who sees life in terms of missions defined and missions completed. I will keep America moving forward for an endless, enduring dream and 1,000 points of light. This is my mission, and I will complete it.
He also created the Points of Light Foundation, an organization that aimed to promote non-governmental solutions to social issues. He later mentioned it again, stating, "I have spoken of 1,000 points of light, of all the community organizations that are spread like stars throughout the nation doing good." Donald Trump even commented on the oddity of the 1,000 points of light phrase, saying, "Putting America first, we understand. 1,000 points of light, I never quite got that one. What the hell is that? Has anyone ever figured that one out? It was put out by a Republican, wasn't it?"
And by the way, you know, all the rhetoric you see here, the 1,000 points of light. What the hell was that, by the way? 1,000 points of light. What did that mean? Does anyone know? 1,000 points of light. I never quite got that one. I'm trying to say, what the hell is that? Has anyone ever figured that one out? It was put out by a Republican, wasn't it?
But this is only one of the concerning references that Bush made. It seemed to Bush that the phrase New World Order was particularly important. In a later address, Bush stated the following: "We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order."
Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order, can emerge. A new era, freer from the threat of terror, stronger in the pursuit of justice, and more secure in the quest for peace. An era in which the nations of the world, East and West, North and South, can prosper and live in harmony. 100 generations have searched for this elusive path to peace, while 1,000 wars raged across the span of human endeavor. And today that new world is struggling to be born. We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. We have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders. What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind: peace and security, freedom, and the rule of law. Now we can see a new world coming into view. A world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order. In the words of Winston Churchill, a world order in which the principles of justice and fair play protect the weak against the strong.
That, of course, sounds like a good thing to most Americans. However, its true meaning could be something quite different and far more volatile. As for the 1,000 points of light, some researchers have seemed to decode the reference. It's been said that inside the Mothers of Darkness castle, the Chateau d'Ameroy, a special ceremony room exists that is reserved for the highest levels of the elite's rituals. In Fritz Springmeier's book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati, he cites the Chateau d'Ameroy as a place that he was told this happens at. According to him, the cathedral of the building allegedly hosts a large domed ceiling, containing 1,000 points of light. Could these be the 1,000 points of light that Bush was referencing? And could his New World Order be a reference to the Illuminati and world domination?
The people that were involved were following directions from George Bush. I don't purport to know it all. I don't purport to know that George Bush is at the very top of all this, but he is as high up as I knew. It was my experience that Ronald Reagan answered to George Bush, not robotically, not under mind control, but willingly, because George Bush was respected for what he knew about bringing in the New World Order. Consider his past. George Bush first began with the United Nations. Then he went on to head our CIA. Then he ran our country through 3 administrations that I'm aware of, the Reagan administration, his administration, and the Clinton administration, because Reagan and Clinton both answered to him. Mexican President de la Madrid answered to him and knew that Salinas was to be coming into power, and Salinas had more influence in Mexico at that time than de la Madrid, that, as far as my experience was concerned. Also, Saudi Arabian King Fahd followed orders from George Bush, as did the Prime Minister of Canada, Brian Mulroney. In 1983, I heard Ronald Reagan and Brian Mulroney discussing the New World Order. Senator Byrd had acted in the capacity of a pimp and prostituted me to Reagan, and I was present at this White House cocktail party. Nevertheless, I heard Ronald Reagan telling Brian Mulroney that he believed the only way to world peace was through mind control of the masses. Once my father agreed to sell me into the project, I was taken routinely to Mackinac Island, Michigan, which is a political retreat where the Michigan governor's mansion is located. It was a bohemian grove of sorts where politicians met and discussed New World Order controls, where they discussed mind control of the masses, mind control in the school systems, how to use occultism as a trauma base. One of my sexual abusers at that time was the Prime Minister of Canada, Pierre Trudeau. Pierre Trudeau is a professed Jesuit. Now, the Jesuits are an intelligence arm of the Catholic Vatican. There's a criminal faction within these Jesuits. I'm certainly not saying all Catholics are bad, nor am I saying all CIA is bad or all politicians. There's good and bad in everything. But nevertheless, Pierre Trudeau represented this criminal faction of the Catholic Church, of the Jesuits, who believed in mind control of the masses.
After seeing all that,
of David Rockefeller, but I don't think you're going to find any accusation online about David Rockefeller. It's all about cover-up. It was very, very good. All the investment, all the money goes, I mean, not all the money, but it goes a lot to the image.
You gave a couple other names to me earlier. I don't want to say it until you're comfortable. One of the names was another famous politician from the West.
Yeah.
How did you meet him?
He was also there that week.
He was also there that week?
Yeah, Pierre Trudeau.
And what was the interaction with you?
Scary.
Was his wife also involved or just him?
I didn't see his wife, or I don't know. I didn't see anybody else but him.
But you vividly remember him. And When did you know it was him later on? Because at the time you're 9, 10 years old.
Yeah, again, this came much, much later. I don't remember exactly when I realized that it was him.
Now, something to note is PBD brought up Justin Trudeau's mom. And although Annika here says she didn't really realize if she was involved or anything like that, the research that I was doing, the other individual who we'll be taking a look at later on, she actually has quite a bit on Justin Trudeau's mom. Whether it's true or not, we'll get into it. But if you had any doubt that she was talking about Justin Trudeau's dad, PBD clarifies it by addressing this to her.
You don't remember when he came to you later that it was Pierre?
No.
Justin Trudeau's father, right? This is who you're talking about.
Yes.
I mean, you've never mentioned his name before, right? No. Trudeau. What was that relationship like? Or the experience like? Was it a one-day thing? Was it a repetitive that happened?
All right, I'll tell you something. David Rockefeller had me trained as a spy. So I was a sex slave, of course, and I was an elite sex slave now. And I was trained as a spy through the mind control training. And so that week, I was sleeping with men, and then I would go report on their weaknesses or their sexual preferences to David Rockefeller.
Why did he need that information? Is that how to blackmail and use it later on in negotiation?
For example. Or if he knows what they want, then he can give it to them sexually.
Now, call me crazy, and, I might have to throw my tinfoil hat back on, but this sounds a lot like what Jeffrey Epstein was basically found to be doing or accused of doing. A lot of reports were coming out after his death, suicide, I should say, saying that he was working for the CIA. He was blackmailing a lot of these individuals, using these sex islands and whatnot. But as PBD continues to push a little bit more on the Trudeau situation, she says something quite shocking that makes him sound like a complete monster.
So, about Trudeau, I said that I could never please him as long as I was alive. That's how scary that was.
You could never please him?
If I was alive.
With Trudeau?
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
It means that he couldn't kill me because at that point I was not a throwaway child. And he scared me enough so that I then tell Rockefeller that that's what he wants, a child to kill.
MK Ultra by me, Kathy O'Brien. Justin Trudeau or Justin Castro? Either way, the father who raised him, former Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, was a master of MK Ultra mind control of individuals and nations, with a goal of implementing what Adolf Hitler, George Bush, and Joe Biden term the New World Order. The question regarding who the biological father is of the current Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, raises questions about his mother. Was Justin's mother, Margaret Trudeau, a presidential model, MK Ultra mind control slave, as I was told by my politically affluent Justin Trudeau? Was he groomed by Pierre Trudeau to lead Canada into the New World Order by genetic design, or through MK Ultra mind control? I know from experience that Pierre Trudeau is skilled in trauma-based mind control, having sexually assaulted me at age 9 at the Mackinac Island, Michigan governor's mansion. My 1995 testimony for Congress, Transformation of America, was censored under national security due to my naming family bloodlines hell-bent on implementing a global slave society, including then Governor of Michigan, George Romney, Rhino Mitt's father, Pierre Trudeau, Justin's so-called father, George Bush, and more. My father sold me into CIA MK Ultra Mind Control's Project Monarch, which is rooted in multi-generational After being trafficked to Pierre Trudeau, I lost any remaining free thought to traumatic control due to his expertise in Jesuit manipulation of the subconscious mind. While I was being trafficked yet again to Gerald Ford to fulfill his perversions, he was blasting Rod Stewart on his stereo as he often did. He told me Maggie May had been titled for Maggie Trudeau. Margaret Trudeau had been in the news due to having been institutionalized for a mental breakdown. Her reputation for sexual promiscuity with world-famous celebrities and politicians was being diverted by media spin focused on her drug use and for being bipolar. Bipolar and schizophrenia are often terms misapplied to dissociative disorders resulting from horrific abuse, such as those experienced in MKUltra mind control. As people around the world recognize Justin Castro Trudeau's imposed dictatorship on Canada, and as increasing numbers of survivors of MKUltra speak out on the pervasiveness of mind control, the internet is scrubbing information on mind control and rewriting history on those like Margaret Trudeau. Research deep.
And I would
We trade almost twice as much with the Americans as we trade with the rest of the world combined. Trade with the U.S. is 40% of our economy. President Trump yesterday made an unjustified threat of a 25% tariff on our already weak and shrinking economy. Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland were surprised, amazingly. Everyone else knew something like this could be coming because President Trump had been talking about it for years on the campaign trail. Yet 20 days ago, Chrystia Freeland said, "Don't worry, Canada will be fine." Apparently, neither she nor Justin Trudeau were following what the incoming president was saying. And now we must take account and we must be honest with our unprecedented weakness. After 9 years of Prime Minister Trudeau, our GDP is smaller than it was when he took off, per capita is smaller than it was when he took office. In fact, our per capita GDP has dropped more than any other G7 country since the year before COVID. We have the most indebted households. We've had the worst housing inflation. A quarter of our people are in poverty. 2 million people line up in food banks. Food prices have risen 37% faster in Canada than in the United States of America. Our economy is teetering on the brink of collapse. And now we face this renewed threat. We need a plan to put Canada first on the economy and on security. So, to start with, on the economy, I'm calling on Prime Minister Trudeau to put partisanship aside and in the spirit of Team Canada to accept that he cannot go ahead with quadrupling the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre. This was an irresponsible policy to begin with, but combining this kind of crippling energy tax increase with potential tariffs from Donald Trump would push our economy into a nightmare and a tailspin. So let's put partisanship aside and axe the tax. Second, the Prime Minister has to put aside partisanship and in the spirit of Team Canada, cancel his energy cap, which would see Alberta and Saskatchewan produce 35% less energy at a time when we need those jobs. It is our biggest industry and our biggest export. The incoming American president says he wants to cut gas prices in half. Well, the only way to do it will be to import more clean Canadian energy. So the Prime Minister has to stop this assault on our biggest industry. Next, he has to cancel all tax increases on work, investment, and making stuff in Canada. Finally, he needs to renew and restart the commitment to end the softwood lumber tariffs and the Buy America policies, just like Stephen Harper was successful in doing, even though Justin Trudeau has not been able to do that under 3 presidents and 9 years. On security. About a week ago, Justin Trudeau admitted that he broke our immigration system. And that brings new challenges. His own published document showed there are 4.9 million people here temporarily that are supposed to leave by December 31st of next year, 13 months from now. 4.9 million people. We asked what the plan was to track their departures, and yesterday his immigration minister said, we're just going to take people at their word. He admits that there have been 2 ISIS terrorists allowed into our country. What is the plan to protect our security and reinstate sovereignty over who is in our country? Military. Justin Trudeau has demolished our military with poor decisions, botched procurements, and wasted money. One thing he could do today is announce that his planned billion-dollar cut to the military is canceled, and then present a real plan to reallocate money away from lower priorities towards rebuilding our military and reinforcing our military security over North America. And finally, on drugs. I don't want to stop drug overdoses to please Donald Trump. I want to stop drug overdoses so that there's not one more mother with her face buried in a pillow sobbing that she just lost her kid. After 47,000 other Canadians have died. That's more than we lost in the Second World War. A 200% annual increase in drug overdose deaths have resulted from Justin Trudeau's radical liberalization of drugs. Justin Trudeau must put partisanship aside, not just for the sake of Team Canada, but for the sake of our people, and fully reverse his liberalization of drugs. Ban them, prosecute those who traffic in them, secure our borders against the illegal importation of fentanyl ingredients, put people in treatment and recovery to bring our loved ones home drug-free. That is necessary now more than ever. Look, President Trump has the right to put his workers and his nation's security first. I will put Canada's workers and Canada's security first. We need a Prime Minister with the strength and the smarts, the brains and the backbone to stand up for this country, to rebuild our security, our military, and our economy. That is what I will do. Let's bring it home.
Shift gears and talk about her mother, because I was quite stunned by your assertion that she was involved in the MK Ultra program, and yet that to me seemed to be the only thing that made sense, because she seemed to be sort of infiltrating the civil rights movement. And I'm going, what is this alleged brilliant scientist doing, constantly involving herself in civil rights protests and making friends with these individuals? And because I'm well read on the MK Ultra program, I recognize the connection there. Can you speak about what she did, or what you are alleging she did? Yeah.
Well, the first thing, but the first place, you got to understand that the Pollen clan, they were like clerks, judges, spies for the British when India was a British colony. And Miss Pollen was born when it was still a British colony. So the rest of the country was up in arms fighting against the British, but they were very, very loyal to the British intelligence service and police service in India. So this is how they all got ahead, by catering to the British. And that enabled Shyamala Gopalan, when she was, after she got her degree in Madras, India, to enter UC Berkeley, which is not the cheapest school in the universe, nor is California a really inexpensive place to go. It's one of the most expensive places. I know. I went to school there. It's very expensive there. She worked at the monkey lab there. She was into it's a real strange combination of psychology and simian studies. in zoology, okay? And she was a little expert, training monkeys and all that. And Madras is an area, her hometown, where there's a lot of monkeys running around the Hindu temples and all that. And so she's very familiar and very good with them. And she developed the theory and this was a time of Jane Goodall. There's this huge boom of women who work with apes, okay? There were ape programs set up all across the United States and England and Europe out of excitement of the Goodall story, news stories. And Goodall were treating apes, the monkey children, as sort of like human children and getting some very, very good responses of taming them. Mm-hmm. So she was of that school. Now, what happened while she was at UC Berkeley, after she got her degree, she moved out of Berkeley and took her 2 kids and divorced her husband, this guy Harris, Donald Harris, who was, at the time he was in biology, then he went into law. Divorced him and moved to San Francisco and did nothing for 2 years. She waited 2 years while her application was in to a hospital in Montreal. So this was the Jewish hospital in Montreal, okay, that she applied to.
Yes, that's where she eventually did work. Yeah, she was eventually employed there.
Process, because they had to check all your background, everything, every little detail about her. And this is because the very famous psychiatrist who really got the MK Ultra program going, Ewan Cameron. He was a Scottish guy, a pedophile, and he was a torturer. He used all sorts of drugs on victims of that program. He passed away, and there was like about 7 to 8 year hiatus where his program was shut down because there was no one in charge, and they had to move the program because Congress, there was a secret, not so secret. There was an investigation in Congress about MK Ultra, so the heat was on the Canadians. The Ewan Cameron's lab was in Montreal. Okay, so the heat was on the Canadians to fess up, so they shut that lab down. There's an infamous Allen lab, and then they wanted to set up another center, also connected to the University of McGill University there in Montreal. Had to have that certification. And in the meanwhile, they were trying to find the new director to take over from them. And he finally got the call. They brought her over. They set her up at another one at the Jewish Hospital Annex. And she took charge of the not only the monkey lab, she took charge of the patient care ward. There was a small patient care ward because that hospital, Jewish Memorial, had a psychiatric clinic also. So she worked as a psychiatrist there in a very small division, which became the Center for the Revived MK Ultra program.
I was under the impression that it was Dr. Sidney Gottlieb who...
No.
Okay.
Sidney Gottlieb was a golfer. He was applied. He wasn't into research.
Okay.
He just applied everything Cameron had developed.
Okay.
Use of drugs, hypnotism, light deprivation, all of those nasty techniques to destroy a human willpower.
Wow.
Capture their brain. Gottlieb is a famous one, and everyone thinks MK Ultra was basically American technique. No, it came out of London. It came out of the Tavistock Institute of Sigmund Freud.
Yes.
World War II.
I am just so shocked that you are bringing this up because I got into a lot of trouble with the media for discussing Sigmund Freud at length, and I've been doing it on this podcast. It's super important for people to learn the truth about him, that he was a person who created a method of psychology essentially to gaslight people who were in fact being molested by their own parents, and that's why he was obsessed with children and sex. And it's shocking that we learned that he's a hero in psychology. And it's just very important for people to learn the truth about him because psychology is then, his family is then what bred propaganda. That would be the Bernays family and Edward Bernays. And you are correct. This all fits right into the MK Ultra program, which was designed to see how you could break down someone's will, how you could hypnotize them. We spoke at length on this show about how the Charles Manson murders, that was actually the CIA and